love you, and that all of us, we're going to fight for you.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
From you, my friend, who doubled the number of vegans in the Senate. I yield for a question while retaining the floor, and I thank you for being here.
I thank you for being here. Senator Booker, I always knew you were a towering intellect and a phenomenal and passionate speaker and advocate, but I did not know your stamina until today. And I am delighted to join you on the floor and have this opportunity to engage in a dialogue with you.
You can't engage in a dialogue. The parliamentarian is going to stare me down. You can ask me questions.
I stand corrected. I'm happy not to engage in a dialogue with you, but to ask you a question.
And I will yield for a question while retaining the floor.
And let me ask the question this way. I was in the airport yesterday when someone handed me a note that said, "Please save our country. Please save our country." And I think the genesis of the note was her profound concern over the direction of this country, over the increasingly authoritarian direction of this country and what is happening to the rule of law in America. We look at institution after institution, and we see the guardrails of our democracy coming down. We see an assault on the rule of law unlike anything we have seen in modern history, maybe in the entire history of the United States of America. Each and every institution. And why? Because they can. Because they feel they can. So they're going after the colleges and universities.
Right.
They're going after the institutions of higher learning. This was an attack that was presaged by J.D. Vance years ago in a speech where he talked about the professors are the enemy. They have to go after the seat of learning. So they're going after the universities, and they're using an enormous cudgel. We'll cut off your funds. We'll cut off hundreds of millions in your funds if you do things, if you say things that we in the administration don't like. If you irritate the personal predilection of the president, you will have your funding cut. It is unlawful, it is illegal, and yet they're doing it because they can. They're going after major American law firms because these law firms had the audacity, the unmitigated temerity to hire lawyers or have lawyers who would take on causes inimical to the president's personal interests. So they're going after these firms and they're threatening the livelihood of these firms. We'll close the courthouse doors. We'll cut your clients off from contracts unless you kiss the ring. And of course, it's not just the firms or what they represent. It's everyone who is in need of a lawyer, who now needs to know that if they run afoul of the policy preferences of the administration, they may never get a lawyer. And why are they doing this to law firms? Because they can. And they're going after judges. They're calling for the impeachment of judges. The latest is Judge Boasberg in a case involving the administration grabbing a bunch of people, designating them as part of a Venezuelan gang, and without any due process, without any process at all, taking them to some maximum security prison in El Salvador. And in fact, it would appear doing so even against the court order when the judge said, turn those places around. Now, why are they encouraging the impeachment of a judge? Well, I impeached a judge here. I was a lead manager before there was an impeachment of Donald Trump, or two of them. I led an impeachment of a corrupt judge. It's the same standard of high crimes and misdemeanors. It is not a high crime or a misdemeanor to disagree in a case brought before a federal district court, to disagree with the flawed reasoning of the government. Why are they doing this to judges? Because they can. Because they can. They're going after the press. They're going after the press and saying, if you don't call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, we're going to prevent you from attending press events at the White House or on Air Force One. And why are they doing this to press? This party that claims to be against censorship, why are they doing this to the press? Because they can, and they will continue to do so as long as they believe that they can, until we, and not just we in this body, but we in this country, stand up to them and tell them, no, you can't. No, you can't. If the slogan years ago was, yes, we can, today it has to be, no, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't trample the rights of the American people. No, you can't censor our speech. No, you can't bring the weight of the Justice Department down on the American people. No, you can't. Because we're going to stand together. We universities are not going to let you pick one of us off. We're going to band together. No, we're not going to let you go after the law firms. We're going to band together. No, we're not going to let you go after the press organizations. We're going to demand free speech. Until we come together, until we mobilize in a massive way together to say, no, you can't, no, you can't, they will continue to believe that, yes, they can violate the law with impunity. So my question, Senator Booker, is how do we tell them, no, you can't, not with our country, no, you can't violate the law, violate our values, violate our interests? No, you can't. How do we tell the administration no?
My friend and colleague, I'm hoping that we could figure out thousands of ignition points where Americans can stand up and do that, call to their fellow Americans to do more. I'm not upset at the folks that have been saying to Democratic senators and House members and me and challenging me. I've talked to so many of my constituents who've said, you've got to do more, and all of us have to interrogate ourselves. Because like I said at the very beginning of this, at 7 p.m. on Monday night, I said, we have to say to history where we stood when they were coming after our constitutional principles, where we stood when they were threatening judges to impeach them for making just decisions, where we stood when they were taking law firms and threatening their business unless they came and kowtowed to the big leader, where we stood when they were disappearing people from America with the due process that even Anton Scalia said they should have. Where were you when they came after the health care of the disabled, the health care of the children, the health care of the expectant mothers, the health care of seniors? Where were you when they attacked veterans, laying them off for no justifiable reason and attacking the VA services that they rely on? Where were you when we turned our back on Ukraine? Where were you when we turned our back on our alliances? Where were you when they took the economy down with tariffs? When they took the economy down by threatening it so consumer confidence drops? Where were you? How many things are going on before we answer the question, as it says in Hebrew, he ne ni. He ne ni. Behold, Lord, here I am. And so I confess that I have been imperfect. I confess that I've been inadequate to the moment. I confess that the Democratic Party has made terrible mistakes that have given lane to this demagogue. I confess we all must look in the mirror and say we will do better. And it's not just defining ourselves what we're against. We, the next generation, as the baby boomers are leaving the stage, the last baby boomer president, we have to say that we're going to redeem the dream. We're going to dream America anew. We're going to start talking about bold things that don't divide people, that unite people. Bold things that excite the moral imagination of a country to do better, to go higher, that call us together. This is the time where new leaders in our country must emerge. I'm not talking about senators. I'm talking about citizens. This time of despair and darkness doesn't demand more darkness. We don't need to demean and degrade people who disagree with us. This is a time for us to do something bigger than that. Do you think Martin Luther King in Birmingham hated Bull Connor? or said, I'm going to defeat this guy by bringing bigger dogs and bigger fire hoses? No. But he did say, we're going to be so creative, we're going to inspire the moral imagination of the nation, we're going to call to the conscience of the country, we're going to excite them about who we could be. When he went to the March on Washington, he didn't stand there and complain about the demagogues. Listen to his speech. He didn't stand there and demean and degrade the governor of Alabama. He didn't stand there and talk down to Bull Connor. No, he stood before the American people and said, it's not what you're against, it's what you're for. I have a dream. And now it's our generation. We have to redeem the dream. We have to excite people again. He, in the highest office of our land, wants to divide us against ourselves, wants to make us afraid, wants to make us fear so much that we're willing to violate people's fundamental rights. We're willing to go after the speech on college campuses. We're willing to go after law firms, go after the freedom of the press. Don't let him do that. Don't become like him. Be an American that says, I look to the future and I'm excited. Yes, things are tough right now. They're hard, they're scary, they're hurting, but we can overcome this. Our American history, if it's nothing else, American history, if it's nothing else, it is a perpetual testimony to the achievement of impossible things against impossible odds. We are a nation that is great not because of the people that are trying to whitewash our history. To remove great people, Native Americans, black people, and women from our military websites. I don't want a Disneyfication of our history. I don't want to whitewash history. I don't want to homogenize history. Tell me the wretched truth about America, because that speaks to our greatness. And so what do I want to people to do? It starts with us, man, and you're doing it. I've seen courage of my colleagues. We're doing it, but we have to do more, and I'm sorry. I'm not going to be a politician that's going to say, we are going to do more for you. I'm going to be a politician. I'm going to be a leader that demands more from America.
Will the senator yield for one last question?
I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
Well, this gets to exactly, Senator Booker, your point. I'm optimistic about this country. Notwithstanding this deep, difficult, dark period we are in, I'm optimistic about this country, and I'm optimistic because of something that Alexis de Tocqueville might have said. There is some dispute about whether he actually said this.
The mere fact that you can quote Alexis de Tocqueville, you got me, you have me.
I would like to believe he said this. America is a great country because America is a good country.
Yes,
if he didn't say it, he should have said it, because it is true of this country. It is what makes me an optimist. There are wonderful, beautiful, patriotic people in every state of the union, and they will see us through this. But it does, I think, require all of us to be reminded every now and then of the better angels of our nature. Now, I remember standing in that well during the first impeachment of Donald Trump.
I remember sitting right here in this seat watching you.
And I'll tell you, I had approached that case as a prosecutor would approach a case that I just needed to prove the president guilty of what he was charged with. But it became apparent very quickly that that was not enough. That notwithstanding the abundant evidence of his guilt, I needed to show something more. I needed to show that it was dangerous to keep him in office. Well, tragically, events since have proven my point, but I made a different argument at that point of the trial, which I think gets us to the present moment, which is that truth should matter to us. What's right should matter to us. And even if it doesn't matter to the president, it should matter to us. That we are decent.
Yes.
As Americans, we are decent. We are good and decent people. As Americans, that's who we are. We don't believe that when someone is needing medical help that they should be turned away. We don't believe that we should turn our back on our neighbor. We believe in extending our hand. We believe we should be able to disagree with each other without it becoming a personal hatred or antagonism. We're Americans. This is who we are. I do think sometimes we forget. And we have to remind ourselves that, as Elijah Cummings used to say, we're better than this.
Yes.
We are better than this.
Yes, I miss Elijah.
And you remind us of this all the time, Senator Booker. You really do. You also remind us that we're not defined by what we're against. We're defined by what we're for. And I'm fully on the same page with you that we haven't lived up to our responsibility as a party and what we're for. I think our democracy is in trouble because our economy has been in trouble. And I think our economy has been in trouble because it's not like after the Depression or during the Depression or the Great Recession when people are out of work. The problem today is not that people are out of work. The problem today is that people are working. They are working. And they still can't get by. And you have too many millions of Americans who see their quality of life and they look at what their parents had and see it as better, and they look at the future for their kids and see it as worse. And amidst that economic difficulty, they're ready to embrace anyone who offers something different. Any demagogue who comes along and promises they alone can fix it. And while this demagogue is not going to fix it, and indeed he's made their lot much worse, it is not going to fix itself. It falls on us to come up with those big ideas. Now, some of those big ideas are not new. Medicare for all, which I support, is a big idea that would expand healthcare access for millions of people and make sure parents can go to work and understand that if they get sick or their kid gets sick, that they will have access to health care. We haven't kept pace with changes in the nature of work, changes that are going to accelerate with artificial intelligence, changes which have meant that over the last several decades, as the country's become more productive, that productivity and prosperity has simply not been shared with the people who made it possible. And I think this economic anxiety, which is felt all over the world with these global changes in the marketplace, have put great stress on the whole democratic experiment. If democracy is not working for people, they will flirt with other models like authoritarianism, but we are here to tell folks that is not the direction we want to go in. But it's still incumbent on us to offer bold ideas for how we can make the economy work for people again. But I do think that what has led people into such bitter antagonisms with each other has been a lot of this uncertainty, the feeling that they're only a car payment or a health problem away from failure. And it's up to us to address that. And so I join you, Senator Booker, in your optimism about the American people. I join you in the call on all of us, really in both parties, but if they're not going to do it, it falls on us to put forward the big, bold economic plans that will ensure that we can answer the central question of our time, which is if you're working hard in America, can you still earn a good living?
Yes.
We need to be able to answer that question, yes, you can. And right now, what we are seeing with this tax cut for billionaires and large corporations is just going to make the problem so much worse. But I want to thank you, Senator Booker, for your irrepressible optimism about the country which I share. I want to thank you for seizing the helm today and every day to put forward that positive vision for our country. And my question is, where do you find the energy, my friend?
I don't know. I'm finding it from my colleagues right now. I'm finding it from my friends. I'm finding it from their heart and their commitment. And I'm finding it from the people whose names and stories we're reading. And I more than you know, I appreciate your friendship. I'm so happy you're my colleague now. And I believe that our future, our tomorrows, as bad as things seem, I still believe that our tomorrows are better than our yesterdays. Thank you. And I know you share that.
Amen.
Will the senator yield for a question?
Before I yield to you, I just want you to know I love you, my friend, and thanks. We're doing some good things recently, you and I, trying to solve some big problems, and I appreciate that. So I yield for a question while retaining the floor.
Thank you, Senator. Unlike Senator Schiff, who said that he didn't know of your stamina before now, I knew well the stamina of Cory Booker. And I've always admired it, not just physical stamina, but moral stamina, the courage of conviction, the stamina to stand up and speak truth to power, which has become now one of the most common phrases that is used in public life. But Cory Booker has epitomized it throughout his career, not only in this body, but as mayor of Newark and as a leader in sports when he was an all-American athlete at Stanford. That physical stamina was matched by a moral stamina that is invaluable in life today, because Americans have come to prize, above all, integrity, authenticity, genuineness, which Cory Booker epitomizes. And so it's not just his eloquence today on the floor and the soaring rhetoric that we have heard from him. It's his understanding and his sense of real life impacts of what we do here on everyday Americans and what everyday Americans are doing right now as we speak here on the floor. Everyday Americans are in the grocery stores where they're seeing higher and higher prices. Everyday Americans are at the VA hospital where their doctors and nurses and clinicians and schedulers and counselors may be out of a job because they may be among the tens of thousands targeted for dismissal. Everyday Americans are in schools, K through 12 and higher education, where the resources available for their teachers in the classrooms right now, in real time, are going to be cut. In fact, the workforce at the Department of Education will be cut by 1/2 as we speak, and funds will be no longer available to teach everyday Americans. And of course, everyday Americans right now are in hospitals and clinics. They are undergoing treatment for life-threatening diseases. Right now, they are lying on a hospital bed with needles in their arms or receiving other kinds of treatment that have been made available, life-saving treatments, by the research at NIH that will be crippled because of the cuts that we're seeing. And of course, everyday Americans are receiving Social Security checks, and Social Security will be cut by this administration. Medicaid, that provides for those everyday Americans who are in doctor's offices right now in America, even as we engage in this kind of soaring rhetoric, everyday Americans are contending with the real life problems of living in America. We live in a country that has never been so unequal in terms of wealth and pay. And if we look back to our own history, we see that that inequality is a danger to all of us. The stock market crash and depression occurred after the Gilded Age, when inequality became so drastic that the middle class was in danger. And of course, everyday Americans who are right now in the military are experiencing anger, disgust, fear, because the secrets about what they are doing, even as they engage in operations around the world, like those pilots who were going to bomb the Houthis engaged in that top secret mission have learned that the details of that mission, the time of their launch, the targets, the timing of their strikes, the weather, the identity of their targets, all were being discussed over a non-secure channel by a careless, reckless Secretary of Defense. And I don't need to go into the details of what was discussed, except to say our allies are reacting with that same disgust, anger, and fear. And they are having doubts about sharing intelligence with us. The Israelis are outraged by what they've seen. The intel communities of other countries are aghast and appalled. And we have yet to explore fully all of the potential ramifications, like what other conversations may have been on that unsecure kind of platform, who else knew about them, what the motives were. There needs to be a criminal investigation. I've called for it. And everyday Americans have a right to be fearful and angry, just as those pilots should be, and our allies, and intelligence communities all around the world. So we need not only an investigation, we need action to hold accountable the individuals, beginning with the Secretary of Defense, who should resign, the National Security Advisor, who should resign, but a criminal investigation launched by the FBI National Security Division to hold accountable anyone responsible for this breakdown of security, to meet the standard of public service that Senator Booker has outlined as what we should demand of ourselves and the responsibility that the American people have a right to deserve. So my question really is about the standard of public service that we should expect of our leaders, and whether there is something we can do. I'm asked so often, Senator Booker, as I go back to Connecticut, and I'm sure you are in New Jersey, what can we do? What can we do? You are leading us on the floor of the Senate by showing what we should be doing, fighting back, sounding the alarm for everyday Americans who are in the grocery store, in their schools, at the VA clinics, Social Security offices. What can we do?
I'm going to answer your question. I just first want to say thank you. There's been so many Congress people coming onto the floor from the House of Representatives. It reminds me of some other times where big things were happening and people would come to the floor, but this is a lot more, and I just want to express thank you for their kindness. I called the chairwoman of the CBC last night and then texted her, and the force of the CBC, which has been giving me spirit and strength for a long time, is really one of the best parts of my time here as a United States Senator, and the fact that they have come through constantly means a lot to me. I'm grateful that my cousin Pam has been here the entire time, just like Chris Murphy, the entire time in the gallery, and I'm so grateful for her. I love her, and she's sitting now next to my brother, and I'm just thankful for that. I want to answer your question because I get it all the time, and I'm not sure how to answer it all the time. I read letters, and it actually got me emotional in the middle of the night, where somebody would detail all their challenges. They would render personal information to me in letters about their struggles with health care, about their conditions, about their pain, about their hurt, just sending it out to their government official that they've never probably met, hoping that they might just listen to you and be activated by your voice. But then many of them ended the letter with that question: I am here to help you in any way. It really moves me because I believe in the deep decency of our country. And so I just want to try to answer that question more with me trying to think creatively about more that I can do as a leader. Because as I've said before, I think we as Democratic leaders have to start thinking more creatively, because obviously we don't control the Senate, we don't control the House, but we have positions that were given to us in trust by the people we represent. And moments like this require us to be more creative or more imaginative or just more persistent and dogged and determined. And I say that in front of some of my colleagues on this floor who I know personally, like you, but also some of my CBC colleagues who are sitting over here to my right who have been my rock for almost 13 years. And I just know, before I turn to my left, to the woman who represents the most important person in my 55 years, my mom, I just want to say that the answer to that question has to be something, that I will do something more than I'm doing now. Because the cause is so great, the challenges are so real, that I will do something that I have not done before to try to help my neighbor in a time of moral crisis in our country. And that I may be afraid, my voice may shake, but I'm going to speak up more. I may be demoralized by what's happening, but I'm going to find a way to get out of bed and breathe and know that I can make myself feel a little bit better by helping another person. I don't know what it is, but we got to help each other now through this and know, I'm a person of faith, and it was said to me by a colleague, that know that weeping will endure through the night, but joy will come. I'm going to turn to my left because I always say that she's a senator, but she's had one of the hardest jobs in all of America, which is to be the president of a shul. I met her and I realized she could probably do anything.
I know about that.
You know, yeah, yes. I am not Jewish, but my name is Booker, so I always say I'm Mish Booker. So there's a formal way I have to do this. So I see you, I love you, and I'm wondering if you have something to ask me.
Yeah, well, the senator